everybody. This is Dr. Caroline Stites. I'm the CEO and founder of VibraGenix. I'm honored to have Dr. Patrick Porter with me. He is the CEO and founder of BrainTap. And today we're going to talk about addiction. So this is a really big issue, and especially across Canada. I wanted to go to the source. Nobody knows more about the brain and more about BrainTap than you do. So I wanted to talk about how you use it, how you've used it, and maybe dispel some of the worries that people have of it changing the brain chemistry. I think it changes it back to where it should be. So maybe we can start there.
Well, first of all, you can't change the brain in a negative way unless you're doing something that's going to be destructive, like a chemical addiction, whether it's drugs and alcohol, things like that, or bad habits. So what we're doing is we're using frequency following response. We're using nature. So if you and I, Caroline, went to the ocean, we'd be sitting there, we'd start to feel good. Well, that's because the ocean has an evoke potential of 10 hertz. We have mirror neurons in our body that mirror our environment. MIT has proved this now, that our environment is changing our DNA structure actually every 40 seconds. Every DNA pair is rebraiding. So when you go to these relaxing environments now, we used to be nomads. We used to be traveling. We go through the forest. The forest is about 13 hertz. That's a high alpha, low beta frequency. It's good for our brain, creates acetylcholine, all the neurochemicals. If we went to the mountaintop, it'd be 7.8 hertz. This is all science now. It's not metaphysics and people thinking this. So what they've proven is that it all has to do with brain wave states. So there's 5 primary brainwave states. Most people out there, when we've measured them, we've measured about 40,000 brains now over the last 10 years. Over 90% of the people we scan are over 60% in delta when they're awake. What this means is their brain actually doesn't have the energy to make a good decision. They don't have the energy to sleep. And if you're not sleeping, that's probably worse than the addiction. But the addiction drives lack of sleep. So what we do at BrainTap is we get them to modulate the alpha theta brainwave and get it more active, downregulate the beta brainwave, which is your reactionary mind, that one that gets you in trouble too. And what happens is with this master brainwave that we train to, we've been doing this since 1986. So this isn't something we just did yesterday. Right. We're in 40,000 clinics. We prove it every day. We're all over the world. We're just opening up India because people get results. We have 72 peer-reviewed journals in research that we do. And what we show is, number 1, sleep recovery. If you're not sleeping, you can't deal with that addiction. If you don't have stress resilience, which means, so just about the brain for a minute, if you have an addiction, that means you have one solution to an infinite number of problems. And that solution isn't working, but you don't have another solution. But you're locked in. This is something called neural pruning. So your brain has actually hardwired itself out of the solution because you keep going down the easy path of doing the addiction. That's why people say you've got to hit rock bottom. You don't have to hit rock bottom. What you need is you need your brain to start doing what's called neurogenesis, which we do every day anyway, but in a good way, and we create neuroplasticity. So we do this through light, sound, and vibration, because this is the language of our biology, not of our thinking. We're changing the way the brain and the body connect, and it's something called the electron transport chain. This is what drives the chemical system. In fact, MIT actually said that your thoughts drive the chemical system, not anything else. So if you're taking a pill or you're getting an injection or you're getting an IV, that's downstream, not even touching the part of the brain that's addicted. The addiction starts in the thought of the addiction. So we have to change the way they think about the addiction, the way they think about themselves. And that's what we've done at BrainTap.
So that's why these injection centers are failing. They're not working because they're just giving a drug to treat the addiction.
Right, because you're not a chemical solution. In fact, MIT just 22 weeks ago came out and said, we are at the very core of who we are electrons, right? Yeah. If you break us down. So we're electrical. Yes. They even went so far as to say we are light, which is kind of a metaphysical concept that people go, woo, but that's the reality of who we are. That's why lasers are so important now. Red light therapy, vibration therapy, all these things. This is why it works, because it works the electrical system. It works before the chemical system. Now, if you can do them both, that's even better. We are in a lot of IV centers around the world because we found that when somebody's doing BrainTap while they're doing the IV, they actually take in 30% more of the nutrient. So there was a brain study done in Salt Lake City for addiction where they have a cocktail, kind of like the Myers cocktail, but when they told me what it was, I go, oh, that's the Myers. They do a little thing so it makes it their own proprietary thing. Right. And But when the people came in, we could measure through urine analysis, they were absorbing 30% more of the nutrient. So because if you're in the sympathetic state, which is the fight or flight, the fear-based state, if that person's coming in and their body is in trauma because of the addiction and because of their lifestyle and because of everyone else talking about it around them, and the whole thing is about just bringing them down, the body's not going to perform like it could.
Yeah, I think it's almost a multifaceted approach. I mean, something like this is so critical for resetting the brain, but I know it's very, very important to calm and balance the nervous system as well. And BrainTap does that. We are using green light now. So we have medical grade green light that balances the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, and it helps people a lot with anxiety. So as far as I really want to speak to the Indigenous population in Canada, they have a lot of problems there, and they're having a lot of problems in the oil industry, and their current solution is not working. So does it matter what the addiction is? If it's methamphetamine, if it's opioids?
No, but the problem with those substances is that we have receptor sites in the brain. So they become, if we didn't have receptor sites, we wouldn't be addicted to them. They would be inert and they wouldn't have.
Right.
So that's why we have to change it at the brain level. You know, when you're doing vestibular work, like when we use the vibroacoustic technology, when you're standing on it, that's changing that. I tell people it's the Gates invention, where all you have to do is restart your computer and everything resets. If we could reset the nervous system, they're stuck in sympathetic drive.
Right.
If their body doesn't get out of sympathetic drive, they can never get into parasympathetic, because healing only happens in that parasympathetic state.
Right.
So if you can combine some of these things together, I mean, individuals, you know, citizen scientists are doing this all over the place that are biohackers. They're going out there and they're measuring things and showing people how they work. And, you know, we use devices like NeuroCheck, and we use the WAVI, which is an EEG device, and things like that. And we can prove to people that their physiology is changing. Now they feel something. So the first step we need to do for any addiction, we need to get them sleeping. If they're not sleeping, they won't improve. Because if somebody didn't even have an addiction and you took sleep away from them, you kept them up for 3 days, they would be crazy too.
Yeah.
We need sleep. And we need 1 hour of deep sleep to detox our brain. We need 2 hours of REM sleep to manage our emotions and our thoughts. So we don't need a lot of sleep. We need at least 6.5 hours sleep, you know, even though people think 8 hours. So whatever we can do to do that without any what we found with pharmaceuticals is that they're good short term, but they're bad long term, because they have a direct reaction at first. And people think, wow, but most of the drugs that are on the market today have only been tested for 14 days.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
So, you know, when you think about SSRIs and things like that, they have a 14-day. Anything they do after 14 days is off label.
Oh, wow.
So people are out there and they're not even as good as the placebo. They've been tested against. The placebo is now 40%. So we need people's belief systems to be in alignment with what they're doing. And it's all about energy, whether it's addiction or whatever. What we have shown at BrainTap, we did a study with VO2 max, which is cellular metabolism. And you probably would find the same thing with your green light therapy. But what it does at the mitochondria level is you burn 30% more fat at the cellular level, which means those little turbines that make ATP make more energy. Yeah. And if we were to measure the brains of these people, I'm going to guarantee you they're going to measure in the low 5%. You need to be above 80% to be at peak performance. You need to be over 50% just to be normal. Even if you have one drink, we can show you. We can have you sit there with our NeuroCheck, show you your brain. And we did this with a doctor that thought that it was just a number generator. I said, Tim, what are you going to do? He goes, we're in Vegas. He said, I'm going to go have a drink. I said, well, give me 5 minutes. Go have your drink. Come on back. I'm going to measure you. He measured a 90% brain function. He's super smart, really good guy. When he came back, his brain measured a 9. He said, I only had one drink. I said, that's because it just robbed your body of all of your energy. What's happening in these addictions is it's robbing their body of energy. They can't make the right choice until we get their energy of their whole biological system up. Your biology affects your psychology and vice versa. So we could do all the counseling we want, but if we don't change the physiology, it's not going to change. And you can't pump things into it. That's not the way it works. Life happens through us, not to us. Remember, the very beginning of life for us, when that sperm and egg hit, you can see a picture of it online. There's a spark. There's light that happens. That light created life. That's still today what we need to energize the body is at the cellular level, get ATP going. The body knows how to heal. The brain knows how to heal. But if we don't get them back into homeostasis, you can't just inject them with things and think they're going to heal, because there's a mismatch there. The body thinks of that as a threat. instead of, it's going to work for them.
I think that's why it's failing, that system. So they're looking for something else. Definitely rebooting the mitochondria is so important. VibraGenix does a phenomenal job of that. So does the red light therapy. Sleep is key. And I can attest to the fact that BrainTap is phenomenal for sleep. It takes almost no time to go to sleep.
Yeah.
I usually can't go through the program without being out.
Yeah, just so anybody watching this knows, you've probably been at a campfire before and you said, I'm mesmerized by the fire, I can't leave the fire. Well, that fire is actually burning at 10 hertz frequency. It's down-regulating your nervous system, putting you into parasympathetic. And it's also emitting infrared light. So these are things that we do now through our health applications, but they knew that the tribals, every ancient tribe knew that. They would meet at the campfire at the end of the night. They had a lot of anxiety. You didn't know if you're going to eat today. You didn't know if you're going to be at war with somebody. It was very different than today. Now, most of our fears are unfounded. They're not really true fears. They're just fears like social media fears, or how is my neighbor going to think of me, or, what's going on. But this drives addiction because the brain doesn't know the difference between real or imagined. So we need to get their energy up to do that.
Yeah, and I think that there has been a lot more fear and trauma around the pandemic. People were very afraid for losing loved ones, losing jobs, not having enough money, not being able to socialize. There was a whole new wave of stuff as far as emotional problems that started then, and a lot more addiction. And the rate of alcohol use was reported to go up 64%.
Right.
And
people think that's a solution. They're looking for a chemical solution to an electrical problem. You got to change the thoughts of that person and get them to downregulate their nervous system. And I know that our tools together do that. That's why we have them here at the research center. And we show it to our doctors every time they come in. We say, this is what you need to do. Once you do the light activation, now there's a system of the body called the lymphatic system. So I'm just saying this for the people that don't know. So this lymphatic system doesn't move on its own. So all those toxins are just sitting there. And now you get on like vibrasonics. Now you're moving the lymph system, which only activates if you're doing deep breathing or bouncing or doing some kind of exercise that would do it. But if you can do it through sonic waves, now the body is detoxing. So there's only 4 reasons people have these brain problems. Number 1 is detoxing. They're too toxic. They can't do it. Number 2 is their thoughts. So we can fix that too. Number 3 is they might have trauma. And now that they've been drinking or doing some drug, they might have trauma over time. So we got to, that's where the red light therapy comes in, the green light therapy, those kind of things. And number 4 is we need to teach them how to use technology. They've now proven that technology actually wires our brain differently. So we need to teach them how to use technology to benefit them instead of working against them, especially with addiction.
I want to touch on trauma. I think trauma is a really big thing, especially even childhood trauma that hasn't been dealt with. Yes. And according to Eastern medicine, which is very, very old, block trauma in the body is the cause of all disorder, dysfunction, and disease. In the VibraGenix, we have frequencies for trauma release. Now in BrainTap, you can work the same direction, correct?
Yes. Yeah, we have bright frequencies in BrainTap now too, in some of the sessions. We only use 19 of his original frequencies, but there's a lot more now. But what happens is everything is vibrating and teaming with energy. When we partnered with our group in Russia that created our NeuroCheck, they have the patent on HRV. They've been doing this since the cosmonaut program. And they actually got the Nobel Prize because they created new math called quantum fractal mathematics. Because the body is a signaling system. And big thing out there in healthcare right now is cell signaling, right? But MIT proved now that our mitochondria are actually beaming codes like a computer code to the rest of the body. But if you don't have the energy, I'll just give one example of one study we did with dementia. If your brain drops below 7 volts, when you were born, it was 18.1 volts. So you're the smartest you're ever going to be. It was 100 billion neural bit processor, it's operating. But as we age or trauma happens to us or toxins, all these things I'm talking about, the brain loses its energy. When it drops below 7, you get dementia. If it drops below 4, you get Alzheimer's. We've proven it over and over again. And in our study, 100% of the people that go through our program are off the dementia scale in 6 weeks because light therapy with vibration and frequency will increase the energy at the mitochondrial level. And then the mitochondria learns when you bring that light into the body, what happens is that cell absorbs that light energy. It restarts something called the Krebs cycle. That Krebs cycle, just make it simple, it starts like a little turbine that starts spitting out ATP. That ATP is the energy or the currency for healing. That's physical, mental, emotional, even spiritual healing. It can't happen without that energy. because our connection is there. There's no separate parts. It's all working together. So if we don't increase the energy of the biological system, they can't change their psychological system. They won't make a better decision. They don't have the energy to make a better decision. They might say, I'm too tired to do that. We need to bring their energy up. Then they'll start making the right decision because they want to be healthy. There's a really good book that I used when I wrote the program for DUIs in Arizona. It was called Finding Your Perfect High. And it wasn't about finding a product or something out there in the world to make it. It was your own brain. Because when your brain is in coherence, you start producing your own pharmacy. You have the world's greatest pharmacy between your ears. It can create 30,000 different neurochemicals. But the problem is that people keep putting other chemicals in, thinking they're going to get their brain to react. Like I said, at first, it does seem like it's doing something. I'm sure none of the nation said, I'm going to start drinking so I can become an alcoholic. They just didn't do that, right? They thought, I'm going to do this because I'm cool, I'm young, I'm whatever.
Yeah.
And then
everybody else is doing it.
And they go, I'm not going to be as dumb as my dad or mom, But then what happens is, that's why in AA they say that you're not as powerful as alcohol. I don't believe that's true. As long as you don't put alcohol into your body, you're way more intelligent than alcohol. But the reality is that they can't make the choice not to do it because they don't have a better choice. Once they get a better choice, they will never make the number 2 choice. They will only make the number 1 choice. So they only have the number 1 choice right now. They didn't give them another choice.
So you have BrainTap in a lot of addiction centers here in the US?
Yes. We have 2 different addiction programs. One is based on AA because a lot of the programs use AA as their format, but it doesn't say it's AA, but there's 12 sessions in the program.
Yeah.
So they go through those, and I've modified them somewhat so you don't have to go confess all your sins to everybody and all. We don't want to bring guilt and shame and that into it. But what it's all about is, how do you regulate yourself? And I use the example of people that go back to school after a midlife crisis and they go, I'm going back to school to get a degree. And they go, I'm an A student. How come I'm an A student when I'm 30 years old, but I was a D student when I was in high school? Because you give a crap right now. You become an adult learner. Our job is to make these people that have addiction adult learners. They become the adult now, instead of being the child. We don't tell them that specifically, but the reality is that they start to regulate themselves. And a self-regulated person doesn't get addicted.
Right.
An unregulated person becomes addicted. They let a substance or a person or a thing control their life. And once you become self-empowered, it could be ancestral even. I mean, the Hopi Indians said 7 generations are influencing us, and MIT just recently came out with a study that showed 54 generations are influencing us. So with BrainTap, we actually do that deep healing because you're disassociating from those negatives and you're associating with the positive memories. And those memories drive behavior. Emotion drives behavior. So the thought happens, the emotion happens, then the action happens. So it's a chain of events that happens. You can't get the horse heart, the old story, you can't put the horse back in the barn.
Right.
These are the thoughts they're having. If they're trying to think that they're an alcoholic or they're a drug addict, well, they have to act like a drug addict. They have to act like an alcoholic.
Right.
The number 1 law of psychology states you can't be a behavior. So why you keep telling people to say that? You're not these things. Nobody can drink alcohol. Nobody can do cocaine. Nobody can do heroin. These are things nobody can do. So there's not a group of individuals that can do these things. They might be able to get away with it, but it's still going to hurt their health. It's still going to maybe hurt their life. It's still going to cause damage. Just some people can get away with it. Just like laws, somebody say, they're only laws if you get caught. Well, that's the same thing with addiction. These people got caught.
Yeah.
So now they realize they can't do it anymore. Now they need a choice. If they don't have any choice, they're just going to crawl back into the old program and do the old thing that they did because that's comfortable for them. And your brain, every morning when you wake up, it only wants to know one thing. Am I safe? Is this familiar to me? Do I know what's going to happen? And if there's no certainty, they're going to go back to what is certain, and that drug is certain to them. And so we need to create another level of certainty where health becomes certainty for them and give them a purpose. That's why in all the sessions saying, what is your life purpose? And it could be just as simple as, hey, my purpose is making a healthy body right now. And then once you make your healthy body, maybe I make a healthy house, with my family. And then I make a healthy community because that's the way the outgrowth goes.
So all of these tools that we have work, whether there's a genetic propensity or not, correct?
Right, because your genetics are changing every 40 seconds anyway. We can't change your hair color or eye color or skin color, but what we can change is what they call epigenetics. So these are what really influence us every day because we are adaptable. We're designed to survive. in just the testament of these people with addiction. Their body's surviving. Some of them don't even eat. They just do their addiction. Our bodies are designed to do that. And your body is designed to heal. That's what most people don't realize. It's not designed to get sick and die. There's no ancient culture in the world that says we keep the wisdom of the tribe with the youngsters. We keep it with the elders. So that must mean our lifestyle is killing people. So we need to look at the lifestyle. We need to look at what easy things can we add into a lifestyle. And it needs to happen at least every 72 hours at first, because that's the nervous system cycle. If we don't break the cycle of the nervous system, nothing changes. So it's not once a week, it's 3 times a week at minimum. Every day would be even better.
Yeah, that was my other question, to have an effective program, because, with taking away the program they have that is not working and putting in these centers, the frequency is important. And for our center here, I think people have the most profound results if they come in at least 3 days a week.
Yeah. So think of the pattern. You get an improvement. In 72 hours, you're back to your baseline. It moved a little bit, but then you don't go again for another 72 hours. Now it went back. By the time you get to the week, they're back to where they were. They're like starting over again. Like they say in Christianity, they backslid, So, that's why you need to go to whatever, church on Wednesday or Thursday or whatever it is. That's why they started doing that, because people were backsliding, right? But the reality is that's just human nature. And by the way, there's a reason that the third Friday of January is called Quitter's Day, because the 21-day cycle is also when people try to go back. That's when your identity gets challenged. We would always weigh heavily on the first 21 days. Communication, what we're going to do with them, pumping them up, keeping them motivated. If they made it past that 21 day to the 28th day, when we did our study with Ohio State University with our franchise, we had a 98% compliance with people coming into our clinic twice a week. This was for weight loss. And so they said they'd never seen that before, because compliance with weight loss is terrible. So many people join Weight Watchers for Life. And I go, why would you want to do that? And they go, what do you mean? I go, why would I want to go to a meeting to learn about being fat for the rest of my life? I want to go to the naturally thin meetings. I want to go to the healthy meetings. So we need to change their whole psychology about it. So there might need to be groups that they meet with, and they do discuss with the counselors, and we teach them how to do positive psychology, not the old school like I was taught in school. That you don't need to revivify. That past is gone. That's a different person. And we always knew in the clinic, when a person would look at a picture of themselves and say, I don't even identify with that person anymore. That's when you know you've made the change, because you are new and different. And you are new and different every day. I mean, your body's changing at 50 million cells per second. Like I said, your DNA is rebraiding every 40 seconds. All these things are happening around you every day, but people want to hold on to the past programming, and that's what needs to change. And it's simple because it's innate, it's inside you. But what BrainTap does is activate that. What light therapy does is activate that. What vibration does is activate that, because the nervous system is trapped. Every cell is respirating, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
When it gets locked in sympathetic drive, it's not respirating. So if we can liberate the body, as simple as it is, we just let go. That's why the old saying, let go, let God, just let go, let it happen. And the body will take care of itself. The healing will happen in the right conditions. And the brain will mend itself, because the brain wants coherency. But we can't keep you doing the same thing. And you can't just inject somebody with something that, they've already proven that with pills. I mean, that's like putting a black tape over your car that says you need engine repair. You just put a black piece of tape over and say, oh, I fixed it. No, you didn't fix it. You just put a piece of black tape over it, because all it did was handle the symptoms. Those are symptom solutions. We're talking about core solutions happening at the very core of that person. So they change in a way that is meaningful and will last. I mean, we've had so many people over the years. Nothing is permanent in life, but once you start becoming an adult learner about life, you don't go backwards. It's like the old story about the 2 frogs in psychology class. Remember back where they said they took one frog and they put it in the pot and they slowly brought it to a boil. It's doing the backstroke, having a great time. Before you know it, it has a heart attack and dies. The other frog, they bring the pot to a boil. They throw the frog and it jumps right out of it. Most people don't realize they're in that pot that's boiling. Yep. Killing them. They would never jump into that. That's why the elders and people looking at them from the outside say, I can't believe you're in there. But they were in there when it wasn't boiling.
Right. It was comfortable.
Right. Then they realize, what do you mean the water's too hot? I feel fine. And then pretty soon, boom, I always tell people, they go, why do you think you need BrainTap? I said, well, can you tell me the number 1 sign of a heart attack?
Well, things that happen before, it's usually shoulder pain, left shoulder pain.
Death.
So you're getting to
usually death. So if they get the shoulder pain, they didn't die. But if they usually it's death. So there's no sign. So you need to have a breakthrough now. You don't need a breakdown. So I think they should be training everyone in schools about this, because the education starts when they're younger. They're getting training from their environment. I tell people, think about a person like a fish tank. And this fish tank is your body. And you've got a problem called addiction. So you take the fish out, it's addiction. You take the fish out, it's addicted. You fix the fish. It's all working really well now in this new environment called addiction. Now you say, now you got to go back to the tribe, put it back in the fish tank. It's going to get sick again because the tank is fish. The tank needs to be fixed. You need to clean the field. You need to clean the energy around it. So that's where education starts early. We do this in schools in India right now. They don't even start school till they do a BrainTap session before they start class. Because we showed if they do brain priming, they call it, they're smarter. They're more attentive. They're more active. So we need to start teaching these kids that this is a part of a lifestyle, that you need it now to improve your schooling, but you'll need it later in life to just handle life's mess, because you don't know what's going to happen today.
All kinds of ups and downs.
Yeah.
So to address this particular need, it's not something that I have worked much with. That's why I wanted your expertise. Right. And what we need to do is put together a system and a protocol that will work very effectively and can be put in all of these tribes or bands and within these companies that are really struggling with this. I mean,
well, the nice thing is this could be ran by either a nurse practitioner or just a staff person most of the time.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're unmanned. So you don't need to, but I would say that whoever is going to be leading like groups and things, they would need to be coherent with what we're doing. So they're talking about it, and that would take a little bit of training, but not much, because they know what they need to do, but they just probably aren't doing it. Or if they're doing it, they'll be relieved that now the actual intervention is part of the solution. And I think it's not a 21-day program, it's a year program. Because what we found, even working with our addictions, 21 days sounds good, but they haven't faced enough life challenges yet. Yeah. And when Mike Tyson says everybody has a plan till they get hit, we need these people to get hit and recover. They had a trauma in their life, something happened that was a disappointment, and they didn't go back to drinking, or they had a support system there.
This has been absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much.